What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Couple Things.
With Shawn and Andrew.
Podcast all about couples.
And the things that they go through.
But today is not quite about couples.
It's definitely about couples.
It's about couples, but it's definitely a different side of the couple thing.
It's about parenting mostly.
Yeah. And we brought in our favorite. She's the only person that gave us sanity going into Drew.
Yes. Dr. Emily Oster is a prolific author, one of my favorites. And I found so much encouragement in her book. She's written 3 now. One is called Expecting Better, all about the data-driven approach to pregnancy. Second is called Crib Sheet, the data-driven approach to how to handle a newborn. And the third is now The Family Firm, which is coming out August 3rd. And I love her style of writing. What she does is essentially study studies. So if the topic is breastfeeding, she'll look at all the studies on breastfeeding and decide,
from every angle too, every side, every science, all of it. Yeah.
And she'll kind of say, hey, this is what all of the studies how do you say that word?
Wow. Aggregated
together say. This is like the conclusion of conclusions, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and her inspiration for writing this is not to psych you out and try to have this really ice cold approach to parenting. It's more inspiration.
It's actually the opposite in trying to calm you down, because Andrew and I learned firsthand that when we got pregnant with Drew, people had such polarizing opinions and thoughts about how to do parenting, how to make every decision, whether to do something or not. It was always this right and wrong. And I don't want to say she debunks all of it, but she goes through every single decision and shows what the actual data proves, which is, I think it's the best book you could read.
Yeah, Doc does a great job at making you feel confident as a parent that you can do it, and you're probably doing it well enough.
Yes.
You know? She has a great sense of humor. I really enjoyed our conversation. If you want to find out more about Dr. Emily Oster and what she's up to, we'll link her information down below, as well as links to her book, The Family Firm. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this one with Dr. Emily Oster. Dr. Emily Oster, it's good to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're great. Excited to have you on. I don't know if you know this. We've only done one other solo interview, Doc, and that was with another professor, Carl Pillemer. He's written some really good books, like yourself, who's written amazing books. So you've walk us through Crib Sheet, Expecting Better.
And the new one's called The Family Firm.
My gosh. Okay. Talk us through, I feel like it's a progression of pregnancy, newborns, and now like elementary school years, right?
Yeah, it is. So it really started, it's sort of like mapping my own journey. So the first book came out, I wrote it while I was pregnant. Did a lot of the research while I was pregnant with my first kid. And then that came out when she was like 2. And then I waited to have a second kid to write a second book so I could make sure that, I kind of got the important stuff and not all the weird stuff you got with the first kid. And so Crib Sheet came out in 2019. And then The Family Firm is about this next phase that I'm in now, where the kids are in school and a lot of life is, decisions you didn't necessarily expect, logistics, kind of how to shape your whole life, plus data about older kids. So it's a little journey.
How do you describe your books as a whole? Like, what do you write about? How do you write?
I write about using data and decision-making in parenting. So I write a lot about how we interpret data around questions in parenting and how we think about correlation versus causality and the limits of evidence and what we can know and what we can't know. And then on top of that, I write about how we can use that data to make decisions that work for our families, recognizing that those are not always the same decisions for the same people, and that the data is a big piece of it, but not always the whole piece. And I think part of what's happened sort of over the course of the books is it's become more about kind of using the data to inform your own choices and combine with your preferences, and less about like, okay, the data says this. And so that's like a little bit of a journey as you parent.
I have to say, after Andrew did his first interview with you, we were pregnant with our daughter. It was that long ago.
Yeah.
And I remember he didn't stop talking about that interview for months. We were so terrified of having a newborn because so many people had so many very strong opinions of this is right and this is wrong. And as a new parent, especially like as a spouse too, navigating that was terrifying. And he would just sit down and he'd be like, babe, you have no idea what she said. I feel so much better about just everything. And we would run through all of it. And it was just, yeah, it made our life a lot easier.
You're embarrassing me, babe.
No, I think that's so nice. No, I mean, I do think there is a sort of freedom almost in saying like, hey, there's a lot of good choices. And I think that piece of Crib Sheet, which was kind of like, here's the evidence on this, but hey, actually in almost all of these situations, there really are a lot of good choices and reasonable people could do different things. And there's just a lot of freedom in that because that phase of parenting is so much of people telling you like, well, that's how I did it. Like you better, you better get this piece of equipment or this, do it like this because that's what I did. And if you don't do that, I don't know, your kid will be a serial killer or whatever is like your big fear.
Oh yeah.
Talk about, you alluded to how the effect of the book has kind of progressed, but what is the effect that you want your books to have versus maybe what they have had in real life?
I mean, I think that the effects I would like the books to have are to make people feel more confident. I think that one of the pieces of parenting I find the most difficult is how anxious I am always about doing the right thing. And I hope that the books help other people be less anxious in some ways or feel that they made the choice correctly. And a lot of the recognition for me in parenting, a lot of the loss of control, the sort of recognition of loss of control is realizing like, I can't control what my kids do. I can't control the outcome of every choice that I make. I can control that I made the choice in a way that made me feel confident about it or as confident as I could. And that's kind of a lot of what I'm hoping people get out of the books. I think sometimes people get that. And then I think sometimes they get like more like, oh, thank you for the permission to like have a cup of coffee. And like, that's okay too. Like, that's a part of it.
So in Crib Sheet, some of the information that you go over is how, breastfeeding is not the end all be all, that it's okay to have some coffee. It's probably okay to like be, to have some wine. You can, do things like sharing a room. You could swaddle it, but a lot of these things you're like, okay, with breastfeeding, there's so much information where it's like, this is going to make your kid 5 times more intelligent. And if they're going to go to Harvard, if you do this, and if you bottle feed, you're going to destroy their future. And it is very interesting how you're just like, yeah, there might be some benefits, but at the end of the day, it's kind of stylistic, and it's like your kid will be okay regardless, which is so good.
All of those, first of all, many of those things are way overstated or just really don't show up in the data at all when you kind of do it right. And then even the things where, maybe it matters a little bit, the effects are small. So there's basically nothing. This is both reassuring and terrifying. There's kind of like nothing you can do that's really going to matter that much. None of these individual decisions are like the decision that is going to make your kid, go to Harvard or go, win some gold medals or.
Very good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Apparently, my parents did not raise me in the same way.
No, they didn't do it right.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
Oh man, that's funny. I think we previously discussed there was a piece of information. I was like so worried when we were pregnant with Drew about, gosh, I just need to load up on the information so that I don't make any wrong decisions. And your book was incredibly encouraging, Expecting Better. And that's why it's like my most recommended book for anyone pregnant. And then also there's just this interview that I heard where you kind of come to realize that your job as a parent is just trying not to mess it up, don't, as long as you're like supportive and you're there for them and, your intention probably is like to love them, then you'll be okay, but just don't mess it up. So, and that means whatever, like I don't know. How do you mess up parenting, Emily?
I mean, it's like, There's probably a lot of ways to mess it up. I mean, I think part of the recognition is that like already taking it seriously, like that's kind of a huge amount of the battle, and that you're loving your kid and being attentive and, paying attention to them and wanting to do a good job. That's kind of like a lot of the thing. And then all these individual things, do I read to them for 23 minutes every day or 15 minutes? It's good to read to your kids. Like, do you have to read for a set amount of time? And if you do it extra time, that's going to matter and stuff. Like, no, these things are all sort of a part of a bigger picture. But by thinking about it, you're already kind of doing it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most comforting things, though, about your data that you actually have compiled is I read every book, I read every article, and it was like, okay, when your child is 18 months old, you're going to have to start doing this. And if you don't, then they're already 8 months behind. Or if they don't have this exact many words that they're saying by 16.5 months, they need to be with a speech therapist. And I feel like there were just so many specifics and nobody backed up why. I was like, well, but I didn't talk, whatever the comparison was. And I turned out fine. I love how you compile all of that data and you're like, actually, that's
range.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's different. And it's really comforting because people make such harsh and like specific statements that terrify you as a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like so much of an emphasis in a lot of these spaces on sort of saying like, well, here's the cutoff, here's like the average, here's some like very specific number that you should be like achieving. And the recognition that like, hey, that there's like a range, a lot of, people turn out great with the whole range of these things, I think is, I think it is comforting.
So all of your books have been meta-analysis, right?
Yeah, it's so meta-analysis is a formal thing, which definitely, if you were like a researcher and you told some like real research people like this is a meta-analysis, they'd be like, that's some lady's book. But I think what is true is that all the books are, effectively like a kind of review, where I take existing literature and I sort of try to compile it to draw some conclusion based on the literature. So in that sense, it is in the spirit of a meta-analysis, but a meta-analysis is like a very formal, different thing.
But you do analyze like a bunch of different studies.
Many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies. Yes.
Gosh. Why did you get started in this?
So I got started when I was pregnant, and I was doing this kind of in the service of my own pregnancy, and it's closely related to stuff that I do at work. So it's sort of closely related to the kinds of questions and techniques that I use in my job, and so it was a sort of natural step to moving to do that, and I got sort of like very deeply obsessed with it. And then I realized that I really liked the challenge of trying to bring that kind of literature together and then communicate it out. And that's actually a very different skill than what I was doing at my job, where when you're a professor and you're writing for other academics, there is an assumption that everyone sort of understands the particular set of tools that you're using. There's something different about saying, okay, now I'm going to try to explain, I did this kind of like version of a meta-analysis. How am I going to explain this to someone who doesn't spend all of their day, reading meta-analyses? And I like that a lot. And that's the piece of the writing that I like the most.
I think you're one of the best in the world at doing that, Professor. Yeah. So you've mentioned how like you just want to have parents be more confident, but if there's anything I've learned over the past year and a half of being a parent, and then also through the whole election cycle, it's like some people are just locked in on a certain concept or style. And I don't know if you've had any luck with telling someone to like, just chill out, dude. But it usually has the opposite effect, I feel like, of chilling out. But how do you do you have any advice on persuading someone like, okay, I know you think that breastfeeding is the end all be all, but actually like, is there a persuasive process that you've had luck with?
No. Okay. I mean, I feel like, I mean, just really realistically, I think that in almost all these settings, if people are dug into something like this, they're dug in. And, it's often not a place where coming back and arguing is that helpful, which is why I think the frame of a lot of the books is not like, here's evidence you can use to convince other people, but here's evidence you can use to make your decision and then be comfortable with your decision. And then when someone comes to you and they're like, why didn't you exclusively breastfeed until your kid was 4? Like, everybody knows that's great for kids and that's how you get them to be a superhero. You can just be like, well, I chose not to do that, and move on. That not that you would be like, actually, that does not make any sense, and let me explain to you why, but just that you would feel like, I don't really need to engage with this discussion. Yeah. I'm just going to say, thanks so much for your feelings. I'm moving on.
Well, I'm just curious, when that other person you're having a discussion with is the person you're parenting with.
Yeah.
That gets a little hairy, I feel like.
Yeah, that's hairy. And I actually think a lot of the work in the family, like the family firm has, at the end of it, like a lot of data on older kids, and it's sort of thinking about schools and extracurriculars and the kinds of things you think about with bigger kids. But the first part of the book is really about family decision making and about, making big decisions and small decisions. And actually a big piece of that is the emphasis on the idea that making decisions in a more deliberate way is a way to lower conflict on these high intensity things. That sometimes if we feel differently about something that's important, it can be a constant source of conflict. And I think sometimes with your partner, you're reluctant to really engage with like, okay, actually, let's not just snipe at each other about this and, have these short arguments. Let's really dig into why are we disagreeing about this and how can we make the decision that works for both of us? Because you can't like leave your partner at the playground and be like, okay, thanks so much for your feelings on that. Like, I'm just going to do what I
want. Talking about Family Firm, can you tease the book for the listeners?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the sort of third piece of the trilogy. So it's got a lot of data discussion around schools, extracurriculars, things like, should my kid go to, what do we know about summer camp? What do we know about sports? But what do we know about food and sleep and kids learning to read and, sort of digging into the data on that. But the first part of the book is all about this idea that I call parenting deliberately, and using tools from business. So using the idea of kind of structured decision making and even it's more basic stuff like Google Docs, to organize your family life and to structure the choices that you make so your life ends up looking like you want it. And the pitch is that if you do that deliberately, if you have a process for doing that, you can actually make those choices in a way that makes you happier and makes your life work better.
Is the comparison to a business-like structure limited in any sense when you are trying to translate that to the family realm?
I mean, I just wrote a book about how you should run your household like a business. So I'm going to say no. I think, so what I think is of course, to some extent, but I think that what is true is that a lot of us operate our professional lives in a way that is very different than our personal lives. And we are very reluctant to bring any kind of sort of analytic decision-making frame to our decisions at home because they feel like they should be emotional. It feels like, well, I love these people. Like I should just be able to kind of let emotions rule at home, and we should know what's right because we all love each other. And that's true that you all love each other, but it is not facilitating that love to not make your decisions correctly. And so I think you can use some of these tools to really make the house, make your family work better, so you have more time for the things that you care about. So I'll give you an example. One of the things I suggest that people do in the book is that they have everybody sit down and write down what they think their ideal day would look like. Literally write down on to every, for Tuesdays, what do you want to do on Tuesdays? for all the hours? Is it like, and not like watch TV all day and, but like in the realm of reality, everybody says like, okay, I want to be at work these hours. I want to be, or I want to be home these hours. I want to be doing with the kids these hours, like whatever it is, that you write those down and then you compare them and you talk about them together. And you could say, well, like, why would we do that? Like, we should just all be like able to accommodate other people and be happy. But actually, by structuring it like that, by really doing that exercise, you can surface things which maybe people aren't always thinking about. And then when they actually write it down, they think, okay, on the weekends, like I want us to be doing an activity as a family every Sunday morning. I want us to go on a hike. I want to do something outside. And your idea is like, we should be doing competitive soccer tournaments every Sunday. Okay, well, we should talk about which of those we're doing, because one of us is not going to get what we want. And if what happens is we just default to one person's thing and we never talk about it, then somebody's going to be upset. And so I think that's a lot of the pitch, is really thinking through this stuff so you can end up in a place that you're happier.
Man, that is such valuable information, Doc. Like, but I feel like the hardest part is actually knowing what you want a day to look like in some sense. Like, I feel like as parents and kids, for sure, it's just like you kind of wake up, do what you've always done, and then you don't actually think about, I would like to golf once a week, or I would like to take a family hike, you know what I'm saying? And it's just actually constructing a vision for how you want your days to go is so difficult.
Yeah, I think it is hard, but also like if you're not doing that deliberately, then I think it is easy to go down a slippery slope where you get very far from your ideal. And I think part of why this book is sort of targeted around these kind of older kid ages is that your days start getting a little more structured, right? Your sort of life gets a little more structured as your kids start going to school and like they have these other things.
This is such good news, Doc. Doc, we need this.
It's going to get more structured. It's getting more structured. You're getting there. It's not just going to be like a chaos of dirty diapers.
That's where we're at.
Like eventually.
Hey, ours is very structured. We've done a really good job.
Well, it's just, I don't know where we're at. I don't even know. Okay. I'm not sure I know what my name is, but we're just here doing it.
So it gets a little more structured.
Good.
Yeah. What in like all of your research and finding all of your data for, truly every topic, have you found that there are more polarizing topics than others?
Yeah, I think that anything, almost everything in parenting is really polarizing. I'm often surprised. I'll be like, well, no one could get polarized by this. And then they'll be like, oh no, somebody does care. People will be like, what kind of sand is the right kind of sand in the sandbox? I'll be like, well, surely no one can get into this. And then people are like, did you know that sand kills people? No, I didn't know that. It's like, so there's always somebody, but I think that the things that are most polarizing are the places where there's a lot of effort that you are, or personal sacrifice that may go into the activity. So I think this is part of why breastfeeding has a kind of complicated dynamic, because choosing to breastfeed your child exclusively for a year or 2 years or however long, that's like a big time investment. It's something that, especially if you are working, but even if you're not, the kind of like, I'm in my office pumping every 2 hours, not now, but like, I was like every 2 hours pumping in my office. I don't then want to be like, oh, well, I just did that for fun. Like there was no benefit for my kid, like I kind of want to believe that. And I think that deals with that leads into some of these sort of more polarizing topics. For things that are easier, it's easier to accept the idea that, different people could do different stuff. But when it's hard, that's where it bites.
I'm curious, were there any topics that you researched over the years that ended up with an outcome that was different than what you believed?
So I think one thing was on discipline. So I, in Crib Sheet, I write about discipline for sort of kids. And I write a lot about this this program 1-2-3 Magic, which is kind of one of these programs with sort of warnings, and then something at the end. Is it a timeout? Is it something else? And prior to doing the research for the book, we had not had much of a discipline situation of any sort going on. And I think what I hadn't recognized was that whether it's one of those programs or something else, like that there's a lot of support behind the idea of consistency in this kind of space that I had not like really put together.
Okay. So you're like, 1-2-3 Magic is okay.
Yeah.
We just finished reading it from like recommendation of close people. So we were both holding our breath. We're like, oh my gosh, is this a good thing?
Like we're about to start it.
No, it's good. It worked really well for my kids actually.
Okay.
It worked well for my kids. My husband had some problem with like the particular like wording of the counting. So we switched it to be something else, but like the general principle is pretty flexible and works good.
Wow.
When it comes to you and your husband though, with all of these different topics, I feel like the biggest, I don't want to say like issue that you find in parenting though, is the different styles. And does your data help with you guys in overcoming those different opinions, or does it sometimes hurt it?
I think part of it is, my husband is also an economist. So like So, okay. So I think we have a sort of data language that is pretty comfortable, but I actually think more so than the data, for us, like interacting in a sort of like almost like more clinical way about some of these parenting things is really important. Like we spend do a lot of our parenting discussion over email, where it's like, he'll send me these emails that like, if people saw them, would just be like, I can't believe it'll be like, I just recapping our last meeting, the following like bullet point items are on your plate and the following bullet point items are on my plate. Like, thanks very much. Let me know if there's any edits to this. It's like, I think if people, so they'd be like, what kind of weird, who is this email from? But for us, that kind of formality, has just turned out to be really valuable for making sure that we're on the same page, in part because it's sometimes easy to be like, well, we agreed on this. Like I said this, and you're like, well, I didn't hear you say that, and so in some ways having it in email, it's like, well, see, it's bullet too, is, I think just has made our lives a little easier, a little less.
I think that's so good. You mentioned processes earlier, and I do appreciate having a business-like mindset when it comes to parenting, just because, as I said earlier, like you only have so much energy, and it's so easy to just fall into whatever like habits or fall into turning on Netflix and not having discussions like this. But setting up processes and systems where you can have crucial conversations with your significant other about parenting, so that it doesn't just all bundle up and explode at some point, I think is so good. So whether it's via email, Shawn and I, a lot of times, like when we have an argument, one of our things is like, it's just better for us to apologize via text, I feel like, or, we just kind of like spill our hearts out and say, I'm so sorry, like whatever. That's just like one of our things. I don't know, like, but it's so good. Whatever works for you, you just do it. And it's good to probably experiment too.
And, the thing is, you can get your kids into this also when they get a little bigger. So my 10-year-old is where she's going to sleepaway camp this summer for the first time. And there's a really long list. And if you ever went to sleepaway camp, but apparently you have to send them like the entire contents of your house. So I have like a Google Doc where I have all of her like this stuff. And so I shared it with her. And I was like, if you like have any ideas about like which of these things we need or whatever, like let me know. And then she sent me this extremely formal email that was like, for the dress outfit, I was thinking of, and then she's like listing some following clothes. And it ends with like, please reach out if you think that that's okay.
She's 10?
I was like,
yes, honey,
she's 10. I mean,
sure.
she's like, she understood that it was funny, but it was also like there was an undercurrent of like, okay, but I did share a Google Doc with you. Man. So,
that's so amazing.
Funny.
Please reach out.
One of the things that stuck with me from our first conversations was you mentioned like, there's a high cost associated with most of these parenting things, like you were speaking about with breastfeeding. I didn't really understand what you meant until I started doing it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, no, this is costly. Like parenting, you definitely time, resources, freaking freedom, a lot of things you're sacrificing. And so I could see how there's such an interesting dynamic of, as your example of breastfeeding, like, oh, I'm spending so much time doing this or pumping. And so I'm going to look at research that like encourages me in doing that. And then it's like this kind of, snowballing effect. I am curious, parenting being such an opinionated space, do you just have like this, like, I don't even know what is that word? Like desire for self-inflicted pain to continue to have these conversations and engage with these books?
No, it's true. And yeah, I think I have some, I think it's that I have a very short memory because when people yell at me, I always feel very bad. People are like, we don't like, I always, I feel terrible, but then, I just do it again. But like 2 days, I only feel bad for like a second. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like a weird denial thing.
So go ahead. Sorry. No, my bad.
No, you're fine. I would say majority of your data though, especially with like pregnancy, for the most part, everything was debunked to a certain extent where it's like, you're not going to be on one polarizing side or the other. It's pretty much just down the middle. Why is it then that people take such opposite sides?
Yeah, I mean,
because if the science isn't there and the data isn't there, then how did we get there?
Yeah, I think it is, sometimes it's that there's some piece of data and people sort of glom onto something that's like kind of flawed or is later debunked and they sort of don't want to move forward. I think that's one piece of it. I think the other piece of it is this is just a space where everybody really, really wants to do a good job, where like you really, really care about being a successful parent. And it is hard. It's hard not to get just very engaged and animated about whatever is the choice that you made or whatever is the thing that you believe, because underlying it is something that you care about so much. And, I think the other thing I write a lot about is like diet. And what kinds of foods are healthy for you, because it's part of what my research is about. And that's also a place which has a lot of the same kind of data problems and a lot of the same kinds of, it doesn't really actually matter as much as people think. And it isn't a place where people get as angry. So there are people who disagree. There are people who think that, dandelion greens are in fact like the font of youth, and they don't like it when you say that they're not. But those people, they don't feel that strongly about it. It's not the pushback that you get with parenting. And I think it's because people don't care in the same way they do about doing it right with their kids.
Is it unsatisfactory for you as an economist or writer to have like in the family firm, a lot of the summarized data was like, yeah, it's probably helpful to do this, but do you wish there was just like 100%, you got to sign your kid up for 3 extracurriculars and like just something super clear as a solution? Do you wish?
Yes, something. Yeah, I mean, I think it would. I certainly wish that some of the things were like that. So because sometimes I feel like when I'm writing, it's like, well, yeah, kind of a little bit either way. It's like in Crib Sheet, it was very nice that there was this one thing about like early allergens where I could be like, yes, that's something you should do. Like give your kids peanuts when they're little.
Yeah.
But I think it's also like in my job, I spent so much time living with uncertainty, like sort of thinking about decision making under uncertainty that is a very comfortable space. So in the books, I feel comfortable with it. In my own parenting, I often wish that it was there were more concrete answers and I wasn't just flailing about so frequently.
Well, I feel like too, as a parent, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a concrete answer of, if I do this, my kid will go to Harvard.
Right.
And when at the end of the day, it's backed by data saying, well, truly then it makes it harder as a parent because you're like, dang, I have to now decide which way we're going to go. And it's up to me. So I understand why people try to find their side, but it's refreshing knowing it's for the most part down the middle.
One thing I do love about your writing style though is it's kind of like a reference manual. It's like, Oh, here's the study on extracurricular activities. Let me just flip to that and like remind myself what the data says. Yeah. Or breastfeeding, and it's good how you broke it up like that. It's helpful when you're actually in the moment of trying to make a decision. Pull out Family Firm. There you go.
Yeah, people sometimes ask like, what's the right way to read the book? And I think particularly for Crib Sheet and Family Firm, with Expecting Better, I think a lot of people just sort of read it through during their, when they're pregnant. But I think for the other two, there's like, yeah, maybe it's a good idea to read it through once, but like some of these decisions, particularly with older kids, like you're not probably thinking about summer camp right now, but eventually you might be thinking about it. And when there's a chapter for that, like when you do get there.
So is summer camp a good thing?
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's like, it's good. It's good. I think the thing about things like summer camp is it can be a very good social support, particularly if kids are sort of struggling in some way. I think there's no particular downside, but kind of when we see the upsides, it's largely around things like when kids have some social struggle or some kind of like lack of happiness, socio-emotional happiness in school, that this is like a different social environment to put them in.
So you'll be, I'm sure, pumped to hear that we got some parenting advice from a TikTok account.
Nice.
We're not playing it.
What?
They said never put your kid in a sleepover at another kid's house.
Oh yeah.
Because what happens?
No. They didn't give us
no
the
follow up. That was
It was like a child psychiatrist who said a child of any age should never go to a sleepover. Period.
No, that was it. We're not saying that's we're not even challenging we're just saying that it's so interesting.
I don't even cover sleepovers. I guess it's hard with that level of data engagement. It is difficult to evaluate that statement because I'm not sure what they're worried about.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I have let my kid, I one time did let my kid have a sleepover. It was fine.
Wow. Yeah. They're okay.
I mean, sleepovers
so far,
can be
I don't
great.
know. I'm not sure what I'm looking for.
Shawn and I discussed this. We were like, all right, for sure we're letting our kids sleep over. I feel like that was an integral part to my upbringing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, whatever. Yeah. That's a new one for you to research.
To look into,
like.
yeah. Today on Instagram, somebody asked me if I'm pregnant, can I touch a goat? So this is not the most unusual question I've had.
Oh my gosh. Do you have more of those?
More questions like that?
Like
that
was weird.
That was I mean, that was the most unusual one this morning.
That's
this morning. If you don't mind me asking, I think I'd be curious, since you and your husband both are economists. And you run off of data for the most part. Has there been with parenting a big discrepancy in any certain topic that you guys have had to kind of work through, or been like, let's go research some more and then we'll come back to the table?
Not to get too personal or anything, Doc, but
I think there are things. I'm trying to think about whether there's sort of big things that we disagree about.
Well, that's good.
Probably, yeah. Probably. I mean, I'm sure there's probably not. I think that that the places we had the most conflict were early on. When the kids particularly in the first year of my daughter's life, that was
really This is good news again, Doc. Jeez, this is freaking great. Keep slinging these encouragement. I love it.
I think I found the first year hard, and I think that he did too. And I think it was also like we weren't quite expecting how many decisions there would be to make and how unexpected some of them would be, and how quickly we would feel like we need to make them. I think we are like, as a couple, much more comfortable in this sort of slightly slower decision-making process that comes with older kids, where you have a little more time to be like, okay, here's an issue we're facing. Let's talk about how to work through it. Like, let's, make some decisions. When you have the baby didn't sleep all day because I thought that we should try to put her in the crib, and you thought we should keep her in the whatever other thing we were having her sleep in. And then, it's like, it's your fault that she's cranky. And like that, those are the moments when we had the most conflict. Yeah.
Tell us where we can buy Family Firm.
Yes.
You can buy it wherever they sell books, I hope. But you can find it on Amazon or on IndieBound or Barnes & Noble. Penguin Press is the publisher. Anywhere.
Comes out August 3rd.
August 3rd.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I'm excited for this. I've read all of the books. I'm excited for the next sequence in this. I don't know what it'll be like. I don't know what's next. What's the next stage in parenting? Elementary, teenage years?
Teenagers. I don't know. I feel
Good
like
luck.
That is probably my biggest fear.
Yeah, me too. So that's why I haven't gotten there yet. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, teenagers.
Yeah. No.
Whatever that sound was, I think.
Because then you're talking about social media, hormones, opinions.
Does your 10-year-old have a phone?
No, not well, so this actually, the book ends with like, when should you get your kid a phone? So my 10-year-old, we have like a dummy phone because sometimes she walks to the library by herself and it's kind of far. And so we wanted her to have a phone for that. She doesn't like use it for anything except we charge it when she's going to go to the library.
I like that.
She just goes to the library and reads?
She takes out books. You can't stay in the library because of the coronavirus.
Oh,
interesting.
Wow. Maybe a future.
You can go there, but you can't.
You can go there and get the books, but you can't stay.
You can go walk around, touch all the books you want.
That's right.
But you gotta leave.
Yeah. You gotta leave. You gotta go away with your books.
Yeah, teenagers scare me. Teenagers, I don't even want to think about our daughter being a teenager. There's too many things.
Yeah.
No, and she's gonna. I feel like they're gonna hate. They're gonna hate us. Like.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why I think it's good to have two kids, because then when the one of them hates you, maybe the other one doesn't hate you right that moment.
Hedge your bets a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm banking on Drew, our daughter, will just choose him, and then our son will choose me. I'm right. One of them. I got a 50-50 shot.
I think that's kind of, I think that's about where we are on our kids.
Yes.
All right. So just small ask here. What's the one piece of silver bullet parenting advice that you can give us?
It's just a phase.
Yes.
I like that. We actually say that a lot. We've just now come to that realization.
Expand.
It's just that almost everything will pass, and it will.
Dang.
It is very, it is very anxious in the moment, or seems very important in the moment, or like it will last forever. But almost every phase of parenting, particularly this early stuff, you like wait a little bit, that will pass.
Dang. That's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep. One thing I've been thinking about is how I feel like my mindset is, okay, just get Drew to the next phase. And then whatever, like there's for some reason, even in my mind, like, oh, as soon as she's out of the house, like I'm done as a parent. I don't know why, like that's just a built-in, but it's not the case.
That's a bad thought.
No, that's not true at all.
Yeah, it's not true.
You're stuck.
I've been challenging.
Forever. Yeah.
If you think about, okay, she's gonna be 18, and then we'll probably, I don't know, we live to be 85 statistically maybe, and so we'll have like 40 years together when she's an adult and out of the house. It's like, how can I build my parenting to get to that point of like us having this healthy adult life together? And yeah.
I think about that a lot also, actually, is sort of like how, particularly as the kids have gotten older, like how do I make this into a relationship that is going to like, that we are going to have as adults. And, as they get to be able to talk and they get old, you sort of start to see the pictures of that and see the things that your kids are good at, and the things that you want to help them work through, and just, I don't know, how do you kind of support them, and so you can have a relationship as adults? It's hard. Yeah.
I heard an analogy to parenting as like, it's just kind of like a treasure hunt where you're kind of just holding your kid's hand and trying to figure out like what's going to be discovered next, like what skill or what interests they're going to find. Do you agree with that analogy, or?
Yeah, I actually like that analogy a lot, because I think that there is sometimes a temptation, particularly I have the temptation of sort of trying to like make my kids be good at the things that I'm good at, or do the things that I care about, or that I think are important. And and actually my son is much more like me in terms of like the kind of ways he wants to, the things he likes to do. And my daughter is sort of somewhat less like me. And so there's been a little bit of a sort of process of kind of figuring out how I can make sure that I am valuing the stuff that she is good at and that she likes to do, like, as much as possible.
Another small question for you, sarcastically. What are your hopes and dreams for your children?
I think just that they will be happy. I mean, I think that they will find something that they love in their life, that they love to do. I mean, I think for me, liking my job is actually a big piece of like me being happy, is kind of having the thing that I do every day be something that brings me joy. And I don't really care what that is for my kids, but I would like them to have something like that. And then I think also that they will find a person that they like to be with. So those are, small. They're just small things. A job you love and a spouse that you like. That's it.
Not even that you love.
Not even love. You just need like somebody who's like not awful.
Oh man. Well, Doc, such a pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate all the wisdom that you shared with us today, and also that you've shared in your books. We will link information on the family firm down below. And appreciate you spending time with us as we approach the meltdown phase of pregnancy here. Yeah. Things are just really about to fall off the rails, and
so
thanks for being a part of that.
Yeah. Good luck. I will say I found the initial transition with number 2 much easier than with number 1. So I'm hoping that for you as well.
Dang, that's the third piece of encouragement, Doc.
Yeah,
thank you.
I will also say it sounds bad to say this, but also it makes me really happy. You're the first person to say that to us.
Huh.
Yeah. Which I love. I'm going to hang on to that and be like, she's the professional. She knows.
No, I will say I found like my life before Penelope was like totally different. And so then when she came, it was like we had to have a whole different life. When we had Finn, it was like we already had this life surrounding like having a kid and so we sort of like slotted him in, and it was just a much more like, it was a much easier transition.
I'm going to hang on to that because
hang on to it.
Everyone else is like, oh, geez.
It's 2. It's 12, more than twice the work. Yeah. I didn't think that.
You're playing man coverage now, man. Like, whatever it is. Yeah.
Whatever.
Anyway, hey, Doc, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.